After their wedding, Martin rented an even more elegant mansion for Lizzy and they moved in together. For the first few months, their life was perfect, like a fairy tale. Lizzy was happier than she had ever been. But as time passed, she began to notice something very strange about Martin. Martin had a peculiar habit. Every night, he would sleep in a coffin for half of the night and in bed with Lizzy for the other half of the night. The coffin had been hidden away in the basement of the house. Lizzy had been to the basement many times and had never before seen the coffin. She would later come to find out that the coffin used to appear from thin air every night and it would disappear when Martin woke up to come back in bed with her. Lizzy was a bright young woman studying at the Mombasa Polytechnic. Her life was a whirlwind of lectures, assignments, and occasional outings with her friends. One day, she met Martin, a charming and affluent young man who worked in Mombasa. Martin was everything Lizzy had ever dreamed of. He was kind, generous, and had a way of making her feel like the most special person in the world. Martin often showered Lizzy with gifts, taking her on shopping sprees and fancy dinners. It wasn't long before Lizzy fell madly in love with him. Martin's affection didn't stop with her. He extended his generosity to her immediate family as well. He paid university fees for Lizzy's younger siblings and even built a new house for her mother, who had been living in a rundown home for many years. However, there was one odd thing about Martin that Lizzy couldn't ignore. Despite owning a grand mansion with many bedrooms, he never allowed her to spend the night there. Whenever they were together at night, it was either at a rented hotel or Lizzy's apartment. Martin explained that he lived with his nephew and niece and didn't want to disturb them. Although it seemed strange, Lizzy brushed it off, blinded by her love for him. Martin proposed to Lizzy during a romantic trip to Dubai. She was overjoyed and accepted without hesitation. They returned to Kenya and began planning their wedding. Martin met with Lizzy's elders and cleared all dowry payments, leading to a grand wedding that was the talk of Mombasa. After their wedding, Martin rented an even more elegant mansion for Lizzy and they moved in together. For the first few months, their lives were perfect. Life was like a fairy tale. Lizzy was happier than she had ever been. But as time passed, she began to notice something really strange about Martin. Martin had a peculiar habit. Every night, he would sleep in a coffin for half of the night and in bed with Lizzy for the other half of the night. The coffin had been hidden away in the basement of the house. Lizzy had been to the basement many times and had never before seen the coffin. She would later come to find out that the coffin used to appear from thin air every night and it would disappear when Martin woke up to come back in bed with her. Lizzy was horrified and heartbroken when she discovered this. She remembered her strict Christian upbringing and knew she had to get away from him. When she confronted Martin, he revealed a chilling secret. Martin told Lizzy that he had gained his wealth by sacrificing his distant relatives. With time, he would need to sacrifice even his close ones. He had already sacrificed one of his brothers, which was why he was living with his nephew and niece. Martin warned Lizzy that if she tried to leave him, he would kill her and her entire family. He claimed that by eating his money, Lizzy had become a part of his curse. Terrified and desperate, Lizzy knew she had to find a way to break the curse and save her family. She began researching and seeking help from anyone who might have answers. She couldn't trust anyone, and every day was a battle to keep her sanity. Lizzy's first step was to reach out to a local elder known for his wisdom and knowledge of ancient traditions. The elder listened to her story and told her about a powerful ritual that could break the curse. However, it was dangerous and required immense courage and strength. Lizzy was determined to go through with it, knowing it was her only hope. One night, while Martin was in his coffin, Lizzy sneaked out of the house and went to the elder's hut. The elder handed her a small, intricately carved wooden box and told her to follow the instructions inside. Lizzy opened the box and found a piece of parchment with detailed steps for the ritual. She was to gather specific herbs, chant ancient words, and face Martin's wrath. Lizzy spent the next few days gathering the necessary items and preparing for the ritual. She was constantly on the edge, afraid that Martin might discover her plans. Finally, the night came when she was ready to perform the ritual. She waited until Martin was asleep in his coffin and began the chants, her heart pounding with fear. As Lizzy chanted the ancient words, she felt a strange energy fill the room. Martin woke up, his eyes glowing with rage. He lunged at Lizzy, but an invisible force held him back. The ritual was working. Lizzy continued chanting, tears streaming down her face. Martin screamed in agony, his body writhing as the curse was being lifted. When the ritual was complete, Martin lay motionless on the floor. Lizzy collapsed, exhausted but relieved. She had broken the curse and saved her family. Or so she thought. She had to leave Mombasa and start a new life, far away from the horrors she had endured and the scars left by her ordeal. Lizzy was determined to find happiness and peace once again. Lizzy packed her belongings and fled, never looking back. She found solace in a small village where she began a new chapter of her life. Lizzy's new village was small but warm. The people were friendly and welcoming, eager to help her settle in. The village was surrounded by lush green hills, and the air was filled with the sweet scent of blooming flowers. Lizzy slowly began to build a new life, working in the local market and making friends with the villagers. Lizzy kept in communication with her mom and siblings. She revealed to them what had happened between her and Martin and why she had to remain in hiding at the moment until the dust settled. She wasn't sure whether Martin was alive or not, but according to her mother, he hadn't come looking for her, and they also hadn't heard of any reports of his body being found. It's like Martin had just disappeared into thin air. On her final conversation with her mother had advised her to remain in hiding until she felt secure, and only then should she resurface. One day, while Lizzy was at the market, a young woman named Anini approached her. Anini was kind and generous, and the two quickly became friends. Anini was a healer, known for her knowledge of herbs and traditional remedies. Lizzy admired her skills and often sought advice on how to live a healthy and peaceful life. One night, Lizzy received a phone call from her mom. On picking the phone, it was her younger sister, and on the other end of the line, she sounded distraught. She was sobbing uncontrollably. Lizzy's heart began to pound immensely. She knew that something was wrong. She tried to calm her sister down so that she could speak clearly and tell her what was going on. And when she managed to do so, her sister informed her that about an hour back, her mother had all of a sudden begun to speak to herself like a mad woman and ran out of the house aimlessly. Her and her brother followed her and caught up with her in the middle of the streets, where she collapsed and moments later passed on. And at the time of the call, her sister was at the mortuary. Lizzy could not believe it. She immediately collapsed on the ground and sobbed intensely. In an instant, her whole world turned upside down. Her mother did not have a history of mental illness, so she knew that her death was brought about by Martin's curse. Lizzy became helpless. She didn't know what to do next. It seemed that the ritual she had performed on Martin hadn't worked and that her woes were far from over. Lizzy then went into Anini's house since she didn't have any other person to turn to. She knocked on Amani's house with tears still cascading down her cheeks. On opening the door, Anini could immediately tell that something was wrong. She then hugged her and began to console her, and then invited her inside and offered her some herbal tea. And as soon as Lizzy had calmed down, Anini gently asked her to explain what was going on. Lizzy hesitated but finally opened up about her past, including Martin's dark secret and the curse she had faced. Anini listened intently, her eyes wide with shock. "You have been through so much," she said softly, "but your strength and bravery are remarkable. I believe that you are still in danger." Lizzy's heart sank. "Why do you say that?" she asked. Anini took a deep breath. "It seems the curse you tried to break was powerful, but curses can have lingering effects. There is a chance that Martin's dark energy could follow you, especially if he has powerful allies." Lizzy felt a chill run down her spine. "What should I do?" Anini's expression turned serious. "You must perform a protective ritual to ensure that the dark forces cannot reach you. It will require rare herbs and a sacred ceremony." Determined to protect herself and her new life, Lizzy agreed to help Anini with the ritual. They spent days gathering the herbs and preparing the sacred space. Lizzy was filled with a mixture of hope and fear. Could this ritual truly protect her from the lingering darkness? On the night of the ritual, Anini and Lizzy prepared a circle of herbs and candles. As they chanted ancient prayers and performed the sacred ceremony, Lizzy felt a strong, claiming presence surround her. The air crackled with energy, and Lizzy could sense that something powerful was happening. But as the ritual reached its peak, a sudden gust of wind extinguished the candles, plunging the room into darkness. Lizzy and Anini froze, their hearts racing. A shadowy figure appeared in the doorway, its eyes glowing with a sinister light. Lizzy's breath caught in her throat. The figure was Martin. Somehow he had found her. Martin's voice was cold and menacing. "You thought you could escape me? I have not forgotten you, Lizzy." Anini stepped forward bravely. "You have no power here, Martin. Leave now or face the consequences." Martin laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the room. "You are a fool to think you can stop me. I will not rest until I reclaim what is mine." Lizzy's heart pounded as Martin's shadowy figure advanced. She gripped Anini's hand, her fear mingling with a fierce determination. This time she will not be powerless. She will fight with everything she had to protect her new life and her newfound friends. The battle between light and darkness had begun, and Lizzy knew that she had to summon every ounce of courage and strength to overcome the evil that sought to destroy her. The room was filled with tension as Martin's shadowy figure loomed menacingly. Lizzy and Anini stood their ground, determined not to let the darkness overwhelm them. The ritual had been interrupted, but Lizzy knew they couldn't afford to give up now. Anini quickly grabbed a small, glowing crystal from her pouch and held it up. "This crystal contains the essence of protection," she said. "It will help us push back against Martin's darkness." Martin's eyes narrowed with hatred as he saw the crystal light. "You think a mere trinket can stop me? I am beyond the reach of your petty magic." With a swift motion, Martin lunged at Anini and Lizzy. The room shook as his dark energy clashed with the protective force of the crystal. Lizzy could feel the ground vibrating beneath her feet, and the air grew thick with menacing presence. Anini began chanting louder, her voice steady despite the chaos. Lizzy joined in, her voice trembling but determined. The ancient words seemed to push against the darkness, creating a barrier of light around them. Martin roared in frustration, his form flickering and shifting as he struggled against the light. "You cannot win, Lizzy. You will never escape your fate." And all of a sudden, the room lit up with a blinding light, and the ground began to shake even more violently. Everyone in the room fell to the ground and covered their eyes because the light was too much to bear. All of a sudden, a dark pit emerged in the middle of the room, revealing the enormous flames from what seemed like hell. Martin's eyes widened and he immediately began to scream in terror and agony. The pit began to pull Martin towards it against his will, and he fell into the pit, and it immediately closed down. All of a sudden, the light subsided and the ground stopped shaking. There was a calm in the room. "It's over," Anini stated with a sigh of relief. She got up and walked towards Lizzy, who was still laying on the ground, face down, with her eyes covering her face. She helped Lizzy to get on her feet and assured her that she was free. Lizzy never again experienced any evil around her. She reunited with her brother and sister, and they all decided to live their lives and leave everything that had happened to them behind. That is it for now. It's me, your narrator, Dave Humble. I'll be seeing you soon with more stories. Keep it locked. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. Bye.